Welcome to session 2.1. This session will familiarize you with the first step of the trial guidance methodology, Step 0. Step 0 is crucial because building a solid foundation for your trial is key. This session is targeted at trial organizers and practitioners. It is also advised for solution providers as well as developers, technicians. In this session, we will talk about a trial versus an exercise. What's the difference? The three dimensions of a trial: identifying a trial context and choosing a relevant gap.
The Step 0 is the beginning of the trial creation. It consists of two areas, being the identification of gaps and the definition of the trial context. The outline of this session is the following. First, we will shortly present the trial guidance methodology as a whole. We'll give a short explanation on what makes a trial and what the main objective, as well as the target audience of the trial guidance methodology are. We then come to the start of Step 0, identifying crisis management gaps you want to address in your trial. Afterwards, we explain how to define your trial context. The TGM offers a template which can support you in this definition. We also shortly clarify the three dimensions of a trial which are important to the definition. The creation of a baseline, meaning the visualization of your current situation, should be your result after defining the trial context. This is also hinted at shortly, but more deeply viewed at in session 5.4. Finally, we present the roles and responsibilities in a trial. But beforehand, we introduce you to our user story, which is supposed to familiarize you with an application of the TGM.
Episode 1. Introduction. The main aim of this storyline is to provide a clear example of the practical work to be performed when organizing a trial by following the trial guidance methodology. In the training module, this user story is used as a continuing narrative about how to organize a trial and how to overcome difficulties. It is a user story from the point of view of a crisis management practitioner. Names and places are not mentioned, but real data collected during real trials will be used as examples. Organizing a trial is probably different compared to what you do normally. You will be shown that you can use a structured methodology to assess within your organization the actual value of innovative solutions. Solutions means in this case, for example, new equipment, software, a new type of training, or a mixture of those. Why would you use this innovative trial guidance methodology? Because you want to assess in a most objective way whether an innovative solution can bridge the capability gap your organization is facing. Is this methodology useful for your organization? If you are looking for any kind of new solution, your aim is to first trial it under realistic circumstances to assess whether or not it actually works for you. Although a new solution might have great reviews, every organization is different, and hence there is no one-size-fits-all solution in crisis management. Hence, you can use the trial guidance methodology, abbreviated as TGM, for such an objective and fact-based assessment before actually procuring it. Plus, you are following a specific and structured method that is proven by others to be effective. By comparing the results of your trial with your current crisis management processes, you will be able to detect the potential extra value of the innovations investigated. What could be the worst or the best outcome from trialing new solutions before spending a lot of money on something that does not actually help you? The worst outcome would be the TGM helps you to avoid buying and implementing the wrong tool. The best outcome would be that after a trial you have proof that the innovation indeed improves your crisis management capabilities. Is it worth the work? Let's see by following the user story of this trial owner. Episode 2, Starting Point. Your starting point can be either an organisational capability need, you feel a rock in your shoe, or a promising new tool or innovative solution. Have you seen that? Both starting points are perfect for using the TGM. This story is going to lead you into the methodology. The story will walk you through all steps and give examples to make it practical. It will bring the methodology close to you and your daily work. But who are you? The TGM can be used by, for example, high-level crisis managers and policymakers who are responsible for creating new procedures or for procurement and testing of new equipment. But with the same ease, the TGM is suitable for an exercise manager, identifying needs from earlier exercises and looking for solutions to solve persistent challenges. Good to know. Although this story tells you only one storyline, please keep in mind that every piece of it is scalable. During any step or decision, you can make it larger. But you can also make it smaller. You can adjust the methodology according to your needs. It is not only scalable, but also transferable to other roles and functions in your organisation. This storyline gives a voice to just one practitioner, but it can be anyone detecting gaps or wanting to solve issues in crisis management. Episode 3, The Very Beginning. Say you are working as an exercise manager at a blue light emergency service. You meet with your colleagues over a coffee and discuss the exercises of the last few years. Someone says, "Every time we do that flood exercise, combined with evacuation of the threatened area, we meet the same difficulties. Why don't we look for a new solution?" Another immediately reacts, "Yes, you're correct. I have recently spoken to my colleague from the neighbouring region and she faces the same problem. We're not the only ones." One colleague is quite new in the organisation and he asks what the difficulty is about. Now everyone seems to talk at the same time. The process is not efficient now. It seems to be time-consuming because we don't know who to evacuate in what time frame. We try to evacuate everyone at the same time. It brings large costs to society. We do not effectively use our assets, and we have not even mentioned the expected traffic problems. After this storm of problems, you get time to sigh. Yeah, there we are facing a gap. You could have determined other gaps in this situation. Gaps might be seen in the prediction of floods, defining needs for help, communication on the situation, and so on. But at this moment, you choose for what seems to be the most challenging and relevant one: efficiency in evacuation procedures. Episode 4, Context. Your discussion continues. What can we do now? We could use one of our exercises to try something new, changing the process or using some new tools. You use a metaphor to find out more on the context, and you ask your colleagues, "That rock in our shoe, where is it hurting most?" Together, you come up with a trick. What we can't change is the process. It is fixed in laws and emergency plans. What we might need is hardware. We could buy extra boats for evacuation, but we know we don't have the money. So let's have a look at the software we use in this situation. Is it providing the right information now? Or can we try and find a solution to improve the situational awareness? No one knows the answer. By the way, coffee cups are empty and you need to continue your daily work. In your last minute together, you make the following agreement. You all spend 2 weeks to look around and ask others for solutions. Think about colleagues from other organisations, other networks of crisis management professionals, such as the Sea Mine, conferences, scientists, and so on. In 2 weeks, you will be back and discuss what you collected. Episode 5. What is missing? What do we need? You take your time to reflect with your colleagues on the organisational needs, and you arrive at the following reasoning. You need something providing better information on the situation. In a crisis, you do have flood models, but they are only simulations, and they cannot be combined with weather forecasts. A combined visualisation might be more intuitive. And although floods and flood threats will always be complex, the information available for the different stakeholders could be made clearer. Together, you recognise that just selecting potential solutions for these issues might not be enough. You would also like to test if these solutions are really supportive during crisis situations. You informally develop the idea to organise a kind of exercise to assess these solutions in a realistic setting. You all know exercises, and you are used to running them. But you are well aware that exercises are aimed at different objectives. An exercise is aimed at training the participants. It is aimed at assessing readiness, validating tactical procedures, or to test your colleagues' proficiency of using equipment. But now, you need an event not focusing on the people participating, but on the added value of the innovative solutions. Here, you were attracted to the challenge to do it differently this time, to follow another approach. And yes, there has been the EU project Driver Plus that mainly focused on these type of assessment events, so why not give it a go? The project developed a methodology for validating innovative solutions by organising a so-called trial. It introduced a handbook describing this trial guidance methodology in easy-to-follow steps and a training module explaining how to best use all steps and tools. There is even an interactive trial guidance tool, TGT, available. TGT sounds like some explosive material, but it actually is a web-based tool that will guide you through the organisation of a trial. During your preparation, the full methodology might feel a bit overwhelming, especially the first time you work with it. A tool is provided for that purpose, a tool that will help you by providing you templates for each step to formulate your own trial. It also helps you to keep track. Now you know what all these abbreviations stand for, you start using the TGM handbook and the TGT, and you find out that it contains a huge knowledge database. It also offers examples on how each step was done by other trials. This helps you a lot, as you can copy great ideas and you avoid making the same mistakes. That afternoon you feel relieved, and you decide to pass by your other colleagues and inform them that the TGM, its handbook, the training module, and the TGT indeed will help you in organising your own trial. Episode 6. Who, what, where, when, how, etc. But before announcing this event, you need to know more. The picture is not yet complete. You organise a brainstorming session with close colleagues regarding the following questions. Who should be involved, and in which roles? Do you cooperate with colleagues only, or do you need to ask support from externals, for instance from a centre of expertise? How could the execution of the trial look like? Will you stage it in a live exercise terrain, or more like an indoor tabletop exercise? Does it require specific tools that you don't have readily available? How would your organisation deal with such an evacuation if it had to happen today? What needs to be improved? How much time is needed to organise this trial? Episode 7. Formal decision on the trial. Fully informed, you give a pitch to your upper management. You tell them about the gap you have discovered, the TGM, and the benefits of organising a trial to assess the added value of a solution. You convince them, and there you have the formal decision to organise the trial. You can formally start the work. The same day, you form a team that supports you in making this trial happen, the trial committee. So, you need an organising person, the trial owner, which is most probably you. You also need an evaluation coordinator, and maybe 1 or 2 observers, and a few technicians, filling in the role of technical coordinator. For providing operational experience, and for being the participants during the trial, you need a couple of crisis managers being responsible for such evacuation procedures, who are either colleagues or coming from fellow emergency response agencies. Contact with these crisis management practitioners is to be handled via an experienced colleague in the role of the practitioner coordinator. Some roles can be combined. Some could be realised by external experts. This decision is up to you. What else is up to you? The format of the trial. You have heard about huge events, trials in the field or in high-end simulation centres, 1-year-long preparation, 50 professionals indoors, 300 emergency responders out in the field, a combination of a demonstration and an assessment, and multiple solutions being assessed. But that's not within your scope. You decide to have a small trial at your own premises with a maximum of 4 preparatory meetings and using the testbed's technical infrastructure to assess only 1 or 2 specific software applications. Episode 8. Training you and your colleagues. Don't forget, there is this training module available, exactly the one that you are enjoying now, which provides you with training and practices on how you can best use the trial guidance methodology and its entire toolbox. You have already downloaded and opened up the TGM handbook. But within your organisation, not everyone has the time to read everything. So why don't you divide and conquer? Have 2 or 3 people reading only parts of the handbook or doing only 1 or 2 of the sessions of the training module. And then you meet for an internal training. Here, everyone pitches the core of the step they familiarised themselves with. Afterwards, you can discuss how this can be related to your preparation in general and proceed with doubled speed and energy. Moreover, please remember there is the TGT to guide you through the whole process. And in case you have further questions, you can always ask for methodological support from a centre of expertise.
Back to the theoretical part. Before diving into the first steps of the TGM, first things first. What is a trial? Let us start with something most of you will be familiar with, an exercise. If you are a crisis management practitioner, you have taken part in dozens of exercises and maybe also organised as many. If you are a solution provider or a developer, this might be a bit of new terrain, but you will master it quickly, no worries. An exercise is a training activity. It aims at improving operations with the currently used equipment and procedures. It is focused on human behaviour and knowledge. In an exercise, you can either learn and master a new skill, procedure, tool, or you deepen your knowledge. An exercise can be a drill in which you train as long as until you can do it in your sleep. So this is very focused on improving the skills of those who participate in the exercise. A trial, on the other hand, is a solution assessment. It aims at capability building in crisis management and at bridging crisis management gaps. While an exercise aims on improving effectiveness and efficiency of old procedures, a trial wants to improve by introducing something new. It is focused on bringing innovation, changing processes, and checking new technologies. Now, what does that mean? Within a trial, you focus on 1 or more solutions that might be able to fulfill your needs. Now, there is never a one-size-fits-all solution. Hence, you have to put any solution in your specific context, in a realistic way, to see whether it fits for you. This part, see whether it fits for me, as a crisis management practitioner, is what a trial does. In order to prepare, execute, and evaluate a good trial, Driver Plus developed a structured yet pragmatic approach. The Trial Guidance Methodology. The Trial Guidance Methodology has been developed to allow for a structured assessment of innovative solutions for crisis and disaster management. Hence, it provides a step-by-step guideline on how to assess an innovative solution in a non-operational but realistic context, namely a trial, through a structured approach. It is important to notice that the target audience for the TGM is a broad one. Primary target audience are crisis management practitioners who have identified 1 or more capability gaps or solutions that can be of added value to them. Secondary target audience are solution providers who want a comprehensible way of assessing their solutions, and developer and technicians who are interested in getting objective and quantifiable feedback from their end users. Now back to the structured approach of the Trial Guidance Methodology. The TGM consists of 3 phases: a preparation phase, an execution phase, and an evaluation phase. You need to go through all of those phases in order to actually assess an innovative solution for its added value in your specific context. But do not worry, it is not that complicated. In the next slides, you will learn about the very beginning of the preparation phase. Step 0. But before that, back to the TGM and its 3 phases. In the preparation phase, you prepare your trial. In the execution phase, you do your more technical and logistical preparations. You rehearse the trial, and finally, you run the trial. And then, in the evaluation phase, you evaluate whether the solutions in your trial indeed show real potential to improve crisis management. Let's look a bit closer at the preparation phase. It consists of 2 major parts, the so-called Step 0 and the iterative 6-step approach. While the 6-step approach will be tackled in session 2.2, this session right here will get into the details of the Step 0. In Step 0 itself, you have 2 tasks to fulfill. What is your gap, being the current issue in crisis management you want to solve? In which context do you face that gap? Let's continue first with the user story and see how they go through Step 0.
Episode 9, Step 0, Gap. You defined the following gap. In case of a flood, it is unclear how the water will flow real-time through the terrain. If this was known, you would be able to optimize the evacuation procedure. It would be great if such an innovative flood prediction model can also take into account measures activated while the flood is already happening. By using the Crisis Management Taxonomy, available via the TGT, you can find out which standardized CM functions your gap is addressing. Using this taxonomy brings you added value. You will find out which CM functions your needs are connected to, thereby narrowing down the problem. So, you dive into the taxonomy, and you discover your needs can be grouped under the crisis management function Damage and Need Assessment. Later on, you can use this function to find suitable solutions and look for previous trials aimed at solving similar crisis management challenges. Episode 10, Step 0, Trial Context. Together with your colleagues, you further detail out the trial context. This means answering the who, what, where, and when. For you, as crisis management experts, floods in early springtime are very interesting, especially in daytime on a normal working day. For your organisation, that is the most challenging, because people in the threatened area are away from their homes, families are split up, and they are reluctant to evacuate without their family members. Executing your trial will look like a high-level tabletop exercise with tactical and strategic commanders and decision-makers participating. You do not need the boots on the ground to participate, as they do not call the decision who to evacuate from which area. The fictive crisis you will stage is one with severe rains for several days, causing a river basin to overflow, causing a serious flood within the largest city in your region. For the preparation, execution and evaluation of the trial, you will ask support from experts and knowledge partners like the Regional Board for Water Management, the Meteorological Institute and local authorities. Also, you will use consultancy services from a nearby centre of expertise to help you to organise your trial according to the TGM. Episode 11, Step 0, Describing your baseline. You want to be able to compare the results of the innovation line, meaning when you use the innovative tools and solutions you selected, with a baseline, meaning how your organisation manages such crises currently. The baseline is a description of your current procedures, emergency plans, and nowadays operational systems, the so-called legacy tools. You should be able to quickly draw this out as a flowchart. But halfway through, you become aware that there is a difference between following the plans and how it works in reality. Defining a baseline is not as easy as you thought. You encounter many difficulties in the correct level of detail, the actors involved, the general awareness of the procedures, the timeline, and the use of legacy tools. In the end, you define your baseline exactly around the moment of the decision to evacuate an area which is prone to flood within hours. You decide to plan some interviews with key practitioners to find out exactly how they would handle this situation if it were to happen today. This provides you not only with information for the baseline, but also gives you a quick glance on how working with potential new solutions would be valuable for them. It already unveils some parts of the innovation line. This innovation line is a flowchart, similar to that of the baseline, but then with a depiction of the process when the innovative solution is used.
Let's have a look at the first part of Step 0, identifying your crisis management gaps. In a nutshell, the difference between a current capability and the capability necessary for an adequate performance of different tasks is a capability gap. Before setting up a trial during the Step 0, you have to think about the problems you are currently dealing with and the ideal solution you are aiming at. Identifying your gaps with practitioners will help you to address relevant problems in the trial. Think about the current capabilities of your crisis management organization you are working in. Every day in our work, we face optimization potential. There are many things that can be improved. Sometimes these are only minor things. Sometimes they are quite annoying. And there are times when you just know this has to change. The moment you identify this kind of rock in your shoe, you can call it a gap. You are driven to find a bridge to this gap. But sometimes you do not have this obvious rock in your shoe. You rather stumble upon a promising new solution and want to identify a gap that can be bridged by this solution. This is the solution-driven perspective. The trial guidance methodology is tailored to the crisis and disaster management domain. So the TGM might not help you with a severe coffee shortage, but it will help you with any professional challenge you might face. Therefore, the TGM is focused on gaps in crisis management, or CM gaps in short. Now we come to how to identify gaps. Your experience is the key. Just think a second about what annoys you. What happened in a recent crisis, or during your last shift, or at the last exercise where you thought, we have to do something about this. In case this is not enough to identify and define a precise gap, we recommend the following methods. Conduct a desk research by going through your internal sources. For example, revisit your paperwork. Where did you experience errors, failures, or near misses? Another option is to sit over a cup of coffee with your colleagues and ask them, where do you see potential for improvement? Have you come across something that you would like to try out? You can take that even further by establishing focus groups or perform structured interviews. Of course, these approaches are not mutually exclusive and can be mixed. Moreover, you could create workshops. You'll find information on those workshops as well as the list of 21 previously identified gaps and additional information in session 5.3. Most important in this step is that you detail out exactly what the gap is you would like to bridge. When does it appear? Where does it appear? How often does it come up? And who is involved? Detailing out your gap is also important if you already have a potential solution in mind, because you must know exactly what this solution is envisioned to solve. Now to the second part of Step 0, namely the trial context. In a nutshell, your gap is embedded in a certain context. It is entwined with a bundle of roles, responsibilities, situations, equipment, etc. In order to find a socio-technical solution that bridges your gap, you need to identify when exactly it occurs. This is done by depicting the trial context. After you have identified one or more gaps, you need to analyze them carefully. When do they appear? In which context do they appear? The reason for this deep dive analysis is that you can only assess whether or not an innovative solution can bridge the gap if you are able to try that solution in the same context in which your gap appears. Context includes, for example, the crisis management roles involved in these situations, the equipment and systems used in these situations, the communication channels these involved roles and systems use, the environment in which your gap appears. Important, don't confuse the context with the scenario you will create later on. The scenario will be one point in time where you find your gap, let's say a rainy Saturday afternoon in summer. But your gap most likely also occurs on other days, but maybe only in rainy conditions. Therefore, you do a brainstorming session with your practitioners to identify what is a must-have to create your gap scenario and what is a can-be. Start your brainstorming with the bullet points listed above. For more guidance and inspiration, you can use the trial context template. Here, you have to fill in the involved crisis and disaster management agencies, the involved countries, counties, municipalities, cities, the incident category, the type of trial you have in mind, like a tabletop setting or a field exercise, the facilities and equipment you need for this, and many more. You can find the trial context template in the Trial Guidance tool, which is also provided in the e-learning material. And take a look at session 5.1 to learn more about the Trial Guidance tool. When defining the context of your trial, be aware that every trial has 3 dimensions to take into account when organizing it, and when evaluating the results from your trial. First of all, there is the crisis management dimension. This is core to your trial because you want to improve crisis management. But there is also the solution dimension, because the trial is about assessing specific solutions. And there is the trial dimension, or the way you have set up and executed your trial. So let's start at that core crisis management dimension. In your trial, you will state a mission objective, namely to manage a specific type of crisis in which the gap you want to bridge appears. Say, for instance, you want to improve the communication between 4 sector commanders during a very large industrial fire. Their mission objective, then, is to communicate effectively with each other, and you will determine that by using innovative solutions, their communication is improved. For reaching this mission objective, you need certain persons in certain roles, with certain responsibilities going through certain processes. In this example, these are the 4 sector commanders following their current methods of incident management during large industrial fires. The solution dimension deals specifically with the innovative solutions you assess. These solutions are given to specific users, being the roles in the crisis management dimension, and the functionalities of these new solutions are linked to envision improvements in this crisis management dimension. Hence the arrows flowing out of these roles, responsibilities, and processes into the solution dimension. In our example, a solution you want to assess is providing the 4 sector commanders with new digital radios, with which you can not only send audio broadcasts, but you can also send digital text messages to all 4 sector commanders simultaneously, much like in a chat group. As you might know from your experience with exercises, a lot depends on good logistics. If a key stakeholder gets stuck in traffic, you are either delayed or you replace that person. If it starts raining, you might not be able to play all injects outdoors like you initially planned. All of this is called the trial dimension. And apart from the weather, there are a lot of things in this dimension you can influence which will determine the success of your trial. First of all, your trial objective is directly linked to your mission objective. In a generic way, your trial objective will always be to assess whether 1 or more solutions bridge your CM gaps. But for a specific trial, you will further detail this out, such that your trial objectives become more concrete and you can actually evaluate them. In this example, the trial objective would be whether the new digital radio system makes the communication between the 4 sector commanders more effective. And note, we still need to detail out what actually makes this communication more effective. You also cut up the trial in 1 or more sessions, each being a specific moment and setting at which you want to assess your solutions. So these sessions are closely related to the scenario or scenarios you are running during your trial. In our example, this could for instance be the initial division in sectors between 2 sector commanders, the fire spinning out of control, the arrival of 2 extra sector commanders, and a handover to 4 new sector commanders. When looking at the lowest level, you see that all 3 dimensions require so-called performance measurements. The next session, 2.2, will dive deeper into this. But the core reason to do these measurements is because you want to determine, and therefore measure, whether using the innovative solutions indeed improves reaching the crisis management mission objective. And you want to take measurements on all 3 dimensions because you want to be able to evaluate whether these changes are caused by the solutions you used or due to the way the trial was set up and executed. This concept of 3 dimensions really needs to sink in. Now, say you are evaluating your trial and you are assessing a specific functionality of a solution. You have to be careful to really take a closer look at why it might have not worked as you expected. What were the exact circumstances? Did the sector commanders say they had issues with understanding the radio's interface because it was only available in English, while their English is, like most of their colleagues, not that good? This is then an issue in the solution dimension. Say you ran the trial indoors in a concrete building, and you experienced very bad radio transmissions due to reinforced concrete walls between the commanders. while in a real incident, all commanders would all be outside. That issue is then caused by the way you have set up your trial and is thus related to the trial dimension. Note that you could also argue that it is not uncommon for sector commanders to be stationed inside or around large concrete or metal buildings, meaning the radio system should be able to deal with these disturbances. In a nutshell, only if you look at the exact circumstances, you will be able to assess truthfully whether or not a solution can bridge your gap. After you have set the trial context, you can start creating the baseline of your gap process to gain deeper insights. The baseline is a depiction of the current process in which your gap occurs. This depiction includes all roles, tasks, and information exchanges, including the means by which they are done. Check session 5.4 for further information on how to create a baseline and how to model the desired to-be process being the innovation line. Now we shortly present the roles and responsibilities in a trial. Because you are not the only detective in the trial, we usually call this team the trial committee. It has at least one leader, called the trial owner. You also need someone with great experience in the crisis management process in which the gap appears. This person probably also knows people who could participate in your trial, or can be observers with subject matter expertise. This person is called the practitioner coordinator. Then you need someone who focuses on all evaluation aspects of your trial. This person is called the evaluation coordinator. And experience has it that every trial requires a certain level of technology to be involved, and which thus needs to be set up and configured. This is the job of the technical coordinator. Now, for ease of saying, we depict these 4 core responsibilities within your trial committee as 4 different persons. But these are just roles. You could as well do with less persons in a small trial. For instance, you as trial owner also take up the role of evaluation coordinator. For more information on the trial roles, check out session 2.3. In a larger trial, you might need to have more persons seated in your trial committee, for instance, by adding a scenario coordinator, a logistical coordinator, or venue manager. Know that the TGM is scalable and can be used for both very small-scale trials, requiring the work of only 1 or 2 persons, and for very large-scale trials, running integrated in a live exercise with 1,000 participants. Just don't overdo it with the number of colleagues involved in your core trial committee. Keep it manageable, and always keep your trial objective in mind, especially when working in a team of multiple persons. Now just a short recap of this session 2.1. In the gaps part of step 0, your input can be the Driver Plus Crisis Management Gap List as presented in session 5.3. Your output should be a context-specific validation of Driver Plus Crisis Management gaps. The methods for gap identification are workshops, focus groups, and interviews. The tools are the mentioned Driver Plus Gap List, the CM Tachonomy, online survey tools, Excel, the Trial Action Plan, and the L3, being the Lessons Learned Library. See session 5.6. So this is your checklist. In short, you select gaps from the 21 Driver Plus gaps, discuss them with practitioners, and optionally identify additional gaps. In the trial context part of Step 0, your inputs are the identified gaps, practitioner knowledge, lessons learned documents, and accident reports. It should result in a trial context and a baseline. As methods, you can use brainstorming and discussion, as well as visualization of processes and structures. See session 5.4. Interesting tools might be sticky notes, whiteboard, mind maps, process models, organograms, the trial guidance tool, and the trial action plan. Your checklist for this part is to download, discuss, and fill in the trial context template completely. Depict your first baseline draft. Furthermore, your gap might touch on ethical issues, e.g. CBRNE or data privacy-related topics. Please indicate this in your trial context. This is the end of session 2.1. Thank you for your attention.